Welcome back. I'm Connie Sokol, your host, and it is such a delight today to have our guest with an amazing story about her search for her birth mother and also how that reflected in change on her life and even in her life before and after, and the power of change, especially when it's unexpected, which is a lot of this last year for a whole lot of people. So, hopefully, as you're listening, you'll be able to apply these things that she is sharing to your own life and your own ways of change that happen to you and how you can take it and make it into something wonderful, whether you'll like the change or not. I'm so happy today to have Ana Katia. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. I have been on the
Oh,
page and it's been wonderful.
I'm so glad. Thank you. And thanks for taking a minute. And this is a really tender story. Let me share a little bit of background about Ana. And then I want to kind of jump right into this experience because, so often it's just family relationships are so key to everything that we experience in this life. And there's so much. I remember talking with someone who was talking about family history and was an absolute genius at it. And I said, okay, so family history, talk to me. And he said, families are messy. They're just messy. So if we can kind of embrace that and say, wow, where I stand, where my family stands, it's going to be a little bit messy. That's okay. I love a little bit of background about Ana. She is from Costa Rica, and she's going to talk about that, going back to find her birth mother and what that meant. But she's also an author, a life speaker, an advocate for personal growth and healing, and specifically on marriage and family relationships with an emphasis on social work. So that's kind of her background, and that's what she is talking to. So I just want to get a thought, an idea from you at the very beginning. Were you in your life, were you like, okay, someday I'm going to find my birth mother? Or were you like, I'm going along, doing my thing? And then this just sort of popped up. How did this all start?
Yes, I think I felt more like someday I'm going to return and go and search for my birth mother. It was instilled very young. Since I came and was adopted at age 3 and then came to America at age 3. I think, in our young years, we're pretty innocent in just the world around us. And we're very accepting, as young children. So it did take just a couple years, not long, maybe, 5, 6 years old or something, that I recognized and saw that, yeah, absolutely. Something that was instilled in my heart and that I felt was still needing to carry on and go forward. And that would be going and search for my birth mother. So, yeah.
Wow. And was there anything that you felt like, once I find her, this will resolve X, Y, and Z? Or was there any feeling that you had of, I get this rumble that this is going to be a missing piece for whatever reasons?
Absolutely. Just a little taste, and for those have ever experienced adoption in any way, even looking from a distance at it, there's a little understanding between those that have been adopted. There's a great seeking of knowing, one, like who you are and like your roots. Also, that reflecting kind of where, if I'm in here and if I feel this way about where I'm at, which was a lot of times confusion, even if I was able to be taken care of and everything, it just felt like something was missing. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of thought and feelings and different things on reflecting on what it feels like, and searching, who am I and what could I find from this and what could I piece together. Um, and then also being courageous to go into a change and go back to my country, because I had known that I had come to America, which was completely different. And yeah, just taking that on too was quite scary.
And those are two big pieces. I lived a good part of my childhood in Scotland, and my family was all born there. And then I went to America and then came back to Scotland. And so there's another dynamic of coming to another country and then going back to a country to really know more about your roots. And I love what you speak to is knowing who you are. I don't know about you, but I feel this upswing in so much of a desire from so many people, society at large, to know who they are. This fundamental need to know our identity. And you see the DNA testing kits, and you see all these family history shows and genealogical shows that are coming up, and ancestry.com has just exploded, and people really wanting to know their roots and know who they are and what makes them who they are, and then make choices from there of what they want to do with that. So what were your expectations when you went back to your mother country, so to speak now? So you go back there. Were you nervous? Were you excited? What did you anticipate you would find there?
So for me, I was really nervous. I think for me, being younger, I just assumed I would find her and that I'd figure out a way and that it's going to solve all my problems and I'm just going to be great. And
Yep.
of course, it's going to look a certain way. And she's going to be great. And, you know, I mean, I don't think it's bad to think the best of our situations and to move and grow from positivity and, you know, just look at things with the glass half full. And that helped. I really think that helped in the end. But the reality was also in time, especially as I reached my teenage years and into going into adulthood, which I returned when I was 21, that I really did learn that I come from a very strong Christian home. And I was taught about prayer and I was taught about a lot of beliefs and I had a strong belief system about acknowledging that not everything was in my hands. And so as I grew into adulthood, I had to realize also, coupled with my belief in God and my belief in prayer, that the direction of where I need to go was also in someone else's hands. And I need to be mindful to be open to what was about to happen or what could unfold. And actually, when this opportunity came into my life, it was, wow, it was literally out of the blue. It was something that I did not even see coming. And I waited 18 years. So it was a lot of patience and continuously working though in deciding for myself, if this is going to happen, I just want to be open and prepared when it happens. Because there was many obstacles, many things in my life where I was not seeing this about to be accomplished or this to come forth. I mean, I even took like a Spanish class back in the day, like in junior high to prepare. And I'm like, I'm going to learn Spanish. It's totally in my blood. I so got this. I'm going to totally know it like we do in life, right? Like I totally got this. I got this business, this family, whatever. I got this. And I went and took my class. And at the end of term and to get your grades, I got a D in a Spanish class. And I'm like,
Wait, I'm from Costa Rica.
I'm Tika. So we're Tika and Ticos over there. That's what we're called. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I'll tell you, to be honest, it was crushing because that is all I had really left for me, I felt, because I didn't come with records. I didn't come with anything. I only came with the name of the lady from the orphanage, my orphanage. And I stayed there for about 1.5 years after being abandoned. And then I also had the name of my birth mother. So, and a couple letters from the orphanage. Literally, those were my records. And so I knew I was going with nothing as well. I knew I was literally going with only my birth mother's name and then hoping for the help from the orphanage. But yeah, so I learned this language and I was like, what's going on? I can't even speak Spanish. And I tell you, as small as it was, and I know things like in our lives happen, that it'll just spin us and we'll just be like, I can't do this. I was crazy. Like, what was I thinking? Like you had all of this confidence that you're going to accomplish certain things. And life doesn't always give you what you want. You know, as we see in the change today and in these days, we really need to be in a place of gratitude and acceptance and allowing things to happen because of different purposes, and believe and have faith that there's a purpose in those changes and those different things that are going to happen. But yeah, I didn't know what to do at that point. But as it came closer, I did get further answers on why that was purposeful, why I failed Spanish class.
Well, that I love that you bring up this point that says, you know, to learn what you can and can't control, and that is such an eternal life principle across the board, and then be open to what could unfold. I love how you said that, because I know when I went back to Scotland with my mom, we were looking for a gravesite, you know, of a family member, and we had nothing. We just had the name of the cemetery that she could remember. She didn't even have it on paper. And when we went there, we happened to get a taxi cab driver who we said, can you take us to this place? And we did. And then we happened to find someone who actually found a thing within like 5 minutes of a handwritten something that told us where it was. And then we get back in the cab and I said, man, it's a bummer that I can't remember where I used to live here, you know, like the address. And then I described to him 3 things. I said, well, he said, well, tell me a little bit about it. And I said, well, I remember I walked up and down a hill really far. Like that's a 2 mile thing that you always think when you're young, right? And then it was stinky, and then there was something else. And he said, I think I know where that is. I'm like, what? I've given you nothing. Well, it turns out he used to drive a bus in that area, happened to, drove me straight there. Like, what? So being open to what unfolds, because even it was a completely different country. I had nothing to go on. And here I was just led to someone who led me to what I needed. And I think it is a really spiritual experience. I know a lot of adoption experiences have a lot of amazing miracles that are part of that. And you are a big believer in miracles. Did you see miracles when you went to go and meet your birth mother? What was that experience like? And what kind of miracles did you experience to make that happen?
Absolutely. It was miraculous. I mean, that's all I can really call a term the journey was miraculous. And that was my driven force to share, to even get out of my shell and have courage to share, because it is so hard to hold the knowledge of a miracle inside you. I mean, when
Yes.
it's there, it's there. So yeah, there was definitely miracles. And actually, Connie, one of those clear miracles was when I had entered the country, and after being able to find and get in contact with the lady from the orphanage and have many things unfold, she was actually able to give me information. And she was able to point me to some lawyers, and those lawyers, out of some small miracles, absolutely, I was able to gain my records, which would originally had taken a 6-week appointment, and I got the records within, I had permission to go get the records within 15 minutes, and we had found the records hours later. I had to be patient in that and receive another miracle where that would unfold and show to me my patience, and they would find by one piece of paper, and that's in my book, but they would find with one piece of paper in the records, the man that was looking for our records, the permission for me to have my records. And it was literally by a piece of paper.
Wow.
And Connie, like you, to find the place, just to find the lady from the orphanage, we had the exact thing happen. Well, not exact, but very similar thing happened, where when we were traveling to find the lady from the orphanage, we didn't have an address either. And we didn't know where to find it. And I actually found it years later. The person that went with me, they actually had no idea where we were going. They were lost the whole time, and they had never told me. I really had thought this person that was with me knew where we were going. He's like, no, I was totally lost the whole time. But when we went to approach and find this place, we were lost in the neighborhood. We went to this neighborhood, and we knew we had to go through it. And for some odd reason, it was empty. Like it was almost like a movie, like no one was there. It was so weird. And there was no cars on the side of the road. It's almost like you just saw the houses and then like the street. And then it was like we got closer in our vision. I don't know if we just like didn't see something, but for some reason, all of a sudden we can see as we go down the street a few more miles, this man that's standing on the side of the road. And he's standing there, and and we're like, why is he standing there? And then I look around, and I recognize for myself, there was no car around him. There's no cars. And I'm like, okay, why would someone stand? So we actually drove up to him, and we were like, we've been trying to find this place for hours. Is there any way you know where this orphanage is or whatever? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, I know where it is. And we're like, are you serious? And so he's like, oh yeah. And he had specific directions. And he said, okay, so I can totally get you there, but I need to jump in your car, and then you're going to take me to the place, and you must return me back to the exact spot where you left me. And we were like, okay.
Okay. Like, when in Costa Rica, do as Costa Ricans do. Okay.
You don't have a car either? Like, okay, sure. We'll just have a stranger jump in our car, and we will return you. We swear. I mean, he was serious. Like, you must return me. Like I'm not kidding. Return me here, like the exact same spot I've been standing. Oh, all right. We can do that, So we pointed him there, returned him back to the exact same spot, and we could not help it. Like, we could not help what we could feel. So you won't always know, and you won't always be told like what things by word or anything, what's happening, but you could feel something's unfolding, right? You're like, how did that happen? But he stood there, and we had to ask. And this is what usually pushes us to ask. We had to ask. So we asked and we had opportunity to ask, which was great. And we said, so how did you know this place? And he's like, well, it's actually not an easy place to find. And we're like, okay, good, because we obviously didn't find it. We're not crazy. He's like, but I will tell you why I know this place is because I'm actually the only taxi driver here. And I have been driving this route for 20 years. And I actually have not been to that place more than 2 times. And so even anyone here, even if you were to ask them, they would have no idea. But you picked the taxi driver. And we were like, wait,
Oh,
what? Like,
wow. That is just wow. And
we
that's
did not use a
exactly
phone book or anything for this taxi driver. Like, he literally was standing.
that is exactly. Now, that's what I want to kind of hone in on. You wrote this book 14 days and it kind of goes through this process. That this kind of stepping forward in faith, whether it's adoption, whether it's starting a business, whether it's whatever, that thing that you talk about, that feeling, going with that feeling and having the trust that it will unfold, that it will open to you and that you'll be aware of. I love that you were aware of, you saw that there were no cars, you saw the man stand on the road. Just paying attention is so important to being able to see the next miracle and what my friend calls the next post-it note from God. So really quickly, what was your thoughts and feelings when you did find her?
Oh, it was incredible. For me, when I had been able to have the opportunity to then enter into my city, which we got from the records, then we went up a mountain and we had not quite sure how we were going to find her, but we literally were told by my people of how to get there. And the answer that came to me while we were driving was, you need to listen to the yeses and you need to ignore the no's. And I was like, okay, like that simple, that powerful. Listen to the yeses and ignore the no's. So we listened to that direction. And anyways, so we went forward. We went through all sorts of things until we got to the top of the mountain, right? It's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a storybook. Got to the top of the mountain. We're at the end of the day, the sun's going down, and my friend turns to me and says, we have to leave if it gets dark because it's not safe. So you have about 15 minutes, you better start praying. And I'm like, so I do, because I'm freaking out. It's 18 years later, we're not going back to the States. It's the day before we're supposed to leave the next day. And we get to the top. We then need to head back down the mountain because we know it's not going to be back down to the other location. So we turn around and he's like, hey, so hopefully it's one of the little things that go off from the mountain, one of the trails or something. And someone tells us it's one of these, outlets or whatever they call those, when you go back off the trail. And we turn around and there standing is another man. And he's a farmer and he has a hat on. You can tell he's been working all day. And I'm like, just ask him. And so my friend sticks his head out the window. He's like, so we've been looking like for hours. Like, can you help us? We're like, okay, we don't even know. This is a story. And I know it's crazy, but we don't know if this lady's even alive. But do you know like this floor in Mena Hidalgo? And the guy's like, stops, he pauses. He's like, yeah, wait. Oh yeah, I saw her. She just passed me like actually about an hour or two ago. And we're like, wait, what? And we looked at each other like, holy crap, she's alive, because we didn't even know if my birth mother was alive. So we're like, and she's like, oh yeah, like she just lives down there, right here. Go down that trail, cross the lake, cross the water, go across the little bridge. It'll get to these trees and it'll open up. And we're like, how? Like directions. We're like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, she's just down there. And there's a grove. There's a thing that opens up. So we said, okay. So we did that. We hopped out so fast because I knew I'm like now at 10 minutes. We got to get down. We're probably down at 5 minutes. And he goes ahead of me and says, I'm going to check this out to see if she's really there, for one, and if she's okay. We learned many things from the records that would have to prepare us and prepare her mind and our minds before we can meet her. My mother was extremely opposite of what I had thought the scenario was. Again, acceptance and going forward. And so he went forward and he talked to her and he came back to me and said, she's here. I just saw her. And he told me, Kay, and I remember this so clearly, so many things, but so clearly this time. And he said, Anna, this is a time in your life where you're going to need to choose for yourself what you want to do. And I promise you, whatever you choose is going to change the rest of your life. And I was like,
drop the mic. Oh my gosh. So when you met her, did you feel, I remember Faith Hill talking about when she met her birth mother, and the interviewer said, well, how did that, do all these things for you? And how did it give you self-esteem? She said, no, meeting my birth mother did not give me self-esteem, but it basically and essentially gave her a closure of a piece that she had been wondering about. Was it like that for you?
It was exactly that closure. And I mean, there's also the acceptance of learning, especially for myself, that closure can come over time too. And that the answers came months and weeks and months and years later. I mean, I still get answers from that trip and I'm just like, wow. And so you allow those to unfold as they unfold. But yeah, the answers came with just meeting her and seeing her. And it was important to me that, and it might not exactly happen exactly how we want, but for me, it was important to me that she looked like me. And when I met her, she looked actually exactly like me. And I saw myself at 50 years old, and I was like, holy cow, this is me. Like, this is me. Like, this is what I'm going to look like. And she has a lot of issues and stuff, so she wasn't fully present. But she had called out my full name when she saw me. And it was her teaching me, which I never even imagined, her teaching me a significant lesson, that she had turned around and reached for something, but I hadn't noticed because my mind was just everywhere. And when I kind of just glimpsed and had blinked my eyes just to kind of clear what had just happened, I looked down and she was holding a cucumber, and I'm like, why is she holding a cucumber? Like, what's going on? I looked at my friend. I'm like, why? Where did this come from? And he's like, take the cucumber. I don't know. So I took it, and I had some things in my heart that I quite hadn't understand about myself. Right? It goes back to the self-worth, and can I identify? Are all my answers going to come from other people and everything? And I did learn in this moment and in the future, it's still learning, that it doesn't all come at once. We learn our self-worth, and we learn those things within us, and then with that higher power, for me, with God, and know that a lot of those things need to be filled by Him. But what I had learned from her in that moment was that when she handed me the cucumber, I had in my heart actually a lot of bitterness and a lot of confusion and a lot of different things that I didn't quite understand what love was. And it was just very, very, I don't even know the word is confusing. I don't know. But she had given it to me, and I said, I came and I waited 18 years for a cucumber. I mean, I don't get that. And she handed it to me. And what I received for me, which was, I feel, called inspiration, again, was what you need to acknowledge, Anna, is she is giving you everything she has. She has nothing, and she has fulfilled her role. In this very moment, in her life, her very role, she just chose to fulfill. What are you choosing? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's just that humbling moment of realizing it's not always about us. But then again, it is all about us. And that it comes from forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, loving, having peace and faith and joy, and really seeing that different paths are going to happen, different things are going to happen. Change is going to call to you, and it's going to continue to happen. Look at our world. Everything, so many things in it are changing, but we need to follow that, believe in it.
I love that you share that. You could feel that she gave of that widow's mite, and she gave you life. And I think so much of us, our family stories can be just so messy, as we alluded to before. But I love what you're talking about, this gentleness, this grace, this seeing people where they are, and seeing them with eyes of love and appreciation for what they have done and what they did do. I think that is just so crucial. And realizing everyone has their backstory. Everybody has reasons for why they do what they do, and situations and context. And we just don't know what that is. And it's not our job often to know, but it is our job to be in that space with them and to love in that moment. So really quickly, just as we're wrapping up here, because I know we're running out of time, but oh, this is so beautiful and tender. How has this changed you going forward? How did this impact your life? How has it impacted your life to have this experience, this 14-day experience, and to be able to meet her and things like that to move forward? What's something that you've kept with you that's changed you about this and that stayed with you from it?
Well, for one, I feel that what's really changed for me is understanding that, well, first of all, miracles happen, right? But also understanding that learning and forgiving and loving ourselves is a process, and that we give opportunity for people to do that when we are open in offering that to them as well. Um, and I also got to be able to have like an opportunity to be able to understand, okay, well, then I have to figure this out. Then what kind of attitude do I have to carry then? If I can't change what it is, and my mom's still going to be, birth mom's going to be in Costa Rica, and there's still no location to find her. I actually returned to try to find her again. It didn't work. It didn't work. It did
Wow.
not, nothing worked. And I was like, holy cow, like really, that was a timing thing. And but when we can't change what is in our lives, we can have a change of attitude. And actually wanted to share which full circle came when I was young. Leaders, I always try to find leaders, and that's what I was directed to. And for some reason, and so if we can be open and aware of what's coming to us in our lives, the teaching moments, mine were through books and leaders and speakers. And a book I had read was, well, one was The Hiding Place with Corey ten
Mhm.
Boom, and then the other was Viktor Frankl,
Man search for meaning.
yes, Man's Search for Meaning. And those just, and I had not learned any of this. I was very young. And when I had finished that journey, I had really realized what my most loving quotes, the ones I loved most from them, really meant to me in my life. So from what I took from it was Viktor Frankl, and I'm going to read his quote, says here, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I think that is powerful. And then Corey ten Boom says, worrying is carrying tomorrow's load with today's strength. Carrying 2 days at once. It is moving into tomorrow ahead of time. Worrying does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. So we have strength in today. We have strength in our present. Like we are accepting of that. And at the end of all this, I have to say, if I close with anything, is that yes, self-love and having a self journey is very important, but giving back in that purpose and in that knowing, and really, if you have been able to receive gifts or miracles, give back, because I'll tell you, it doesn't end there. So in giving back in my life and giving back to my community and giving back and sharing my story and giving back and being who I am now, more vulnerable and open, I love what my last leader says, which I love her to death, is Mother Teresa. And she says, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. And I think that's powerful, that we give back, but sometimes that one in some seasons is us, and that's okay too.
Love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing this tender journey. And just to kind of recap for those that may have been joining us just a little bit later, I love these things that you shared, which was, I love that when you were compelled to change, that you have the idea of how it's going to be and then how it actually turns out. That you said what you can't control, know what you can and can't control, and be open to what could unfold. And then look for the miracles, and then listen to the yeses and ignore the nos. And the last thing you said, and I love those quotes from Corey ten Boom and Viktor Frankl and Mother Teresa, but when you said, when we can't change what happens in our lives, we can change our attitude. And I think that sometimes that can seem like such a platitude, but it's so true. That is the only control we really do have. So whether it's adoption or it's a wayward child or whatever it might be in our lives, when we can step into that space and be there, and like Mother Teresa said, don't worry about tomorrow, don't bring in all of that stress and anxiety tomorrow, plenty, sufficient is to the day thereof, right? In the scriptures that it says, right? Today, that we can just focus on who and what is before us. And I love this, that cucumber offering is going to stay in my mind. It's just that of what we have, just whatever we have, we can offer it. We can be in that space. We can give that. And whether it's forgiveness or love or self-acceptance or acceptance of another, how beautiful is that? Anna, if other people want to read this experience, this miraculous miracle upon miracle experience that you had, this 14-day journey, where can they get this book on 14 days?
So right now you can go to my Adopted for Change page. It's the number 4, so it's adoptedforchange.com. Or you can, what's easiest is just go to my Facebook. And right now we are actually in the last edit just to make sure. I have had books printed, but we're in the last edit just to make sure before we go forward with some things. And so if anyone wants one, I am creating those first come, first serve that want one, get on an email list now and send me your email either through my Adopted for Change Facebook page or through adoptedforchange.com.
Love it. So fantastic. And love that you are sharing this truly miraculous and inspiring story, especially in this day and age when we are getting back to those family roots so fully. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And as always, if you've loved what we do, then go below, rate, review, subscribe. We would love to have you stay connected with us. And then you get all of the updated and every week podcasts in your inbox. You can go to conniesokol.com. You can also get our Find Your Purpose challenges and joy challenges and freebies and goodies, my TV segments, blog posts, and courses and retreats, all to help you move forward in purpose and organization and joyful lives so that you can fulfill your purpose now and be able to embolden and help others to be able to do the same thing. And that's everything that we do with these podcasts is that's why it's called Purpose-Filled Life, is helping you to be able to step into your purpose-filled life. So great job today in listening and experiencing and feeling and taking that next step in living your purpose-filled life.